You're not safe here." The barista's whispered warning froze me in place. I was just sitting in Starbucks with my daughter, having what I thought was a normal conversation about my wife's life insurance claim. But nothing about that morning was normal. The young woman behind the counter had recognized something I'd missed completely. She'd seen the signs of what my daughter was really planning. And in that moment, everything I believed about my family shattered. My daughter thought I was too old, too grief-stricken, too broken to understand what she was doing. She thought her father would never figure out the conspiracy she'd been building for months. She was wrong. Over the next 3 weeks, I uncovered a plan so cruel it had already destroyed dozens of other families. But I also discovered that some predators make one fatal mistake. They underestimate their victims. If you want to know how this story ends, subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. My name is Adrian Oberon, and this is how I learned that the most dangerous betrayals come from the people you trust most. 18 months earlier, my wife Elena died of a sudden heart attack. March 15th, 2023. We'd been married 31 years, and losing her left me feeling like half my soul had been ripped away. Elena had always handled our finances. She was the organized one, the planner, the one who remembered passwords and due dates and account numbers. After her death, I struggled with tasks that should have been simple: paying bills, managing investments, even remembering to eat regular meals. My daughter Yara stepped in immediately. "Dad, you don't need to worry about any of this," she said, sorting through Elena's paperwork in our dining room. "Let me handle the financial stuff while you focus on grieving." I was grateful. Yara had always been capable. 31 years old, divorced, working as a marketing consultant. She understood complicated systems in ways I never had. When she offered to help with Elena's estate and the life insurance claim, it felt like a blessing. That was my first mistake. The second mistake was not noticing how quickly she moved to take control. "Dad, you really should add me to your bank accounts," she suggested during one of our weekly dinners. "Just in case something happens and I need to help with bills." "I can manage my own bills, sweetheart." "I know you can, but what if you get sick? What if there's an emergency? It would be so much easier if I already had access." She made it sound reasonable, responsible, the kind of thing a loving daughter would suggest to protect her aging father. I signed the paperwork. Third mistake. I trusted her concern about my mental health. "Dad, I'm worried about you," she said one evening in April. "You seem confused lately, forgetful. Maybe you should see someone." "I'm grieving, Yara, not confused. Yesterday you called me Elena twice." Had I? I couldn't remember. The grief was overwhelming, and sometimes my mind did feel foggy. Maybe Dr. Peterson could prescribe something to help with the depression. Dr. Peterson was Elena's psychiatrist. Elena had seen him for anxiety after her mother's death 5 years earlier. "I don't need a psychiatrist." "Dad, there's no shame in getting help. Mom would want you to take care of yourself." The way she said it, gentle, caring, reasonable, made me feel like resistance would be selfish, like refusing help was somehow dishonoring Elena's memory. Fourth mistake, I went to the appointment. Dr. Peterson was a thin man in his 60s, with wire-rimmed glasses and a soft voice. His office smelled like leather and lavender, designed to be calming. "Adrian, Yara tells me you've been having some difficulties since Elena's death." "Normal grief difficulties." She mentioned memory issues, confusion about daily tasks, calling her by her mother's name. I shifted uncomfortably in the leather chair. "I've been distracted. It's not the same thing as being confused." "Of course. Grief affects everyone differently." He made a note on his tablet. "Tell me about your daily routine." For the next hour, Dr. Peterson asked questions about my sleep, my eating habits, my ability to manage household tasks. Simple questions that somehow felt like a test I was failing. "Adrian, I'd like to see you again next week, just to monitor how you're adjusting." "Is that necessary?" "Yara is concerned about your welfare. As your family, she has your best interests at heart." Family. Best interests. The words felt heavy, loaded with implications I couldn't quite grasp. That night, I sat in Elena's chair and tried to understand why I felt so unsettled by the appointment. Dr. Peterson had been professional, even kind. Yara's concern was touching. Everything was reasonable and caring and supportive. So why did I feel like I was being managed? I went to my basement office and opened a new file on my computer. Personal observations, post Elena. Old habits from my IBM days. When something felt wrong but you couldn't identify why, you documented everything until patterns emerged. I typed my first entry. Day 42 post Elena death. Yara suggests psychiatric evaluation. Dr. Peterson appointment scheduled for next Tuesday. Question: why does getting help feel like losing control? I didn't know it yet, but that simple question would save my life. The stakes became clear during my third appointment with Dr. Peterson. Adrian, I've been reviewing your case with Yara, and we're both concerned about your increasing inability to manage your affairs independently. My affairs are managed fine. Yesterday, you forgot to pay your electric bill. Last week, you missed 2 medical appointments. You've been eating inadequately and neglecting basic hygiene. I stared at him. I paid the electric bill on Monday. I don't have any medical appointments scheduled, and I shower every morning. Dr. Peterson consulted his tablet. Yara documented several instances of confusion and self-neglect. She's provided photos. Photos? What kind of photos? Evidence of your living conditions, unpaid bills stacked on your kitchen counter, spoiled food in your refrigerator, personal hygiene issues. My chest tightened. Dr. Peterson, I think there's been a misunderstanding. My house is clean. I pay my bills on time. I maintain normal hygiene. Adrian, denial is a common response to cognitive decline. Cognitive decline. The words hit me like a physical blow. Cognitive decline meant dementia. Dementia meant incapacity. Incapacity meant someone else would need to make decisions about my life. I'm not experiencing cognitive decline. Memory loss, confusion about routine tasks, poor judgment about personal care. These are all early warning signs. The good news is that we can help you maintain your independence longer with proper support. What kind of support? Initially, increased family involvement in decision-making. Eventually, you may need to consider assisted living arrangements. Assisted living? The words hung in the air like a death sentence. That evening, Yara came to dinner with a stack of brochures. Dad, I've been researching memory care facilities in the area. Some of them are really nice, like luxury hotels. Memory care facilities? Dr. Peterson thinks it might be time to start planning ahead. You know, just in case the confusion gets worse. I looked at the brochures she'd spread across Elena's dining room table. Sunset Manor, Golden Years Care Center, Peaceful Meadows Memory Care. Each one promised compassionate care for families facing memory challenges. Yara, I don't have memory challenges. Dad, last week you left the stove on all night. That could have burned the house down. I didn't leave the stove on. I have photos. Photos again. What photos? When did you take photos? When I came by to check on you Tuesday morning. You were still asleep, and there was a pot on the stove with the burner on high. No food in it, just sitting there burning. I remembered Tuesday morning clearly. I'd been awake since 6, reading the news in my basement office. I hadn't used the stove at all. Yara, that's not possible. Dad, this is exactly what Dr. Peterson warned me about. You're forgetting things and then insisting they didn't happen. She pulled out her phone and showed me a photo. My kitchen, taken from the doorway, showing a pot on the front burner with blue flames underneath. I stared at the image, my mind racing. The pot looked familiar. One of Elena's old saucepans, but I had no memory of using it. When was this taken? Tuesday, April 18th, at 9:47 a.m. I came by to bring you groceries and found this. April 18th. I checked my basement office logs. That was the morning I'd been documenting strange inconsistencies in my daily routine. I'd been at my computer from 6 a.m. to 11 a.m., never going upstairs to the kitchen. Yara, I wasn't cooking that morning. Then how did the pot get on the stove? Good question. How had the pot gotten on the stove? Maybe you put it there when you came by. Her face flushed. Are you accusing me of staging evidence? I'm trying to understand how a pot I didn't put on the stove ended up on the stove. Dad, you're being paranoid. This is another symptom Dr. Peterson mentioned. False accusations against family members who are trying to help. Paranoia, another symptom. Another piece of evidence that I was losing my mind. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about the pot, the photos, the appointments I supposedly missed, the bills I supposedly forgot to pay. I went to my basement office and pulled up my financial records. Every bill paid on time, every appointment kept, every task completed exactly as scheduled. So where were Yara's photos coming from? I opened a new document and titled it Discrepancy Log, Yara's Reports versus Actual Events. Entry 1, April 18th. Yara reports finding pot on stove at 9:47 a.m. My computer logs show I was in basement office from 6 a.m. to 11 a.m. No memory of cooking, no reason to cook. Entry 2, April 15th. Yara reports missed medical appointment. No medical appointment scheduled on April 15th. Calendar confirms. Entry 3, April 12th. Yara reports unpaid electric bill. Bank records show electric bill paid April 10th, 3 days early. I stared at the screen, my hands trembling slightly as the pattern became clear. Every piece of evidence supporting my supposed cognitive decline was coming from Yara, and every piece of evidence was false. I confronted Yara directly the next morning. We met at our usual Starbucks on Highland Avenue. I'd chosen a corner table where we could talk privately, but I'd also positioned myself where I could see the entire coffee shop. Old habits from my IBM security days. Yara, we need to discuss the discrepancies in your reports to Dr. Peterson. She paused with her latte halfway to her lips. What discrepancies? The pot on the stove, the missed appointments, the unpaid bills. None of those things actually happened. Dad, you're doing it again. Forgetting things and then insisting they're not real. I have documentation proving they're not real. What kind of documentation? I pulled out my tablet and opened the bank records. Electric bill. Paid April 10th. 3 days before you claim I forgot to pay it. She glanced at the screen. Maybe you paid it late and forgot. The due date was April 15th. I paid it early. Dad, this obsessive record keeping is concerning. Dr. Peterson says it's a common response to memory loss. When did you discuss my record keeping with Dr. Peterson? We've been coordinating your care. That's what families do. You've been coordinating my care without my knowledge? Her voice took on that patient tone I was learning to recognize. Dad, you signed releases allowing me to communicate with your healthcare providers. I never signed releases. You signed them at Dr. Peterson's office during your first appointment. I tried to remember signing anything beyond the standard intake forms. The appointment was foggy, but I would have remembered authorizing someone to discuss my medical information behind my back. Show me the releases. I don't carry them with me. Then call Dr. Peterson and ask him to email copies. Dad, why are you being so suspicious? Because someone is lying about my mental condition, and I want to know who. The words hung between us. Other coffee shop customers continued their conversations, oblivious to the fact that a family was quietly destroying itself at table 12. Are you accusing me of lying? I'm asking you to explain how you photographed events that didn't happen. Yara set down her latte and leaned forward. Dad, listen to yourself. You're constructing conspiracy theories about your own daughter. This paranoia is exactly what Dr. Peterson predicted would happen. What else did Dr. Peterson predict? That you'd become increasingly suspicious of people trying to help you. That you'd create elaborate explanations for your memory problems rather than accepting them. And what did Dr. Peterson suggest we do about this paranoia? Increase supervision. Possibly involuntary commitment if you become a danger to yourself. Involuntary commitment. There it was, the end game. Who decides if I'm a danger to myself? A judge. Based on medical testimony and family testimony about your ability to care for yourself safely. I studied my daughter's face as she spoke. No nervousness, no uncertainty. She had this conversation planned out, rehearsed, ready to deploy. Yara, how long have you been planning to have me committed? I'm not planning anything except making sure you're safe. Safe from what? From yourself. From making decisions that could harm you. What decisions? Financial decisions. medical decisions, living situation decisions. I leaned back in my chair and looked around the coffee shop. A normal Tuesday morning. People working on laptops, reading newspapers, meeting friends for coffee. Normal people living normal lives, unaware that someone's daughter was methodically destroying her father's legal capacity to make his own decisions. Yara, what happens to my assets if I'm declared incompetent? They'd be managed by a court-appointed guardian. And who would petition to be my guardian? Probably me. I'm your next of kin. And as my guardian, you'd have control over my bank accounts, my investments, my house, everything Elena and I built over 31 years. Dad, you're making this sound sinister. Guardianship is about protection, not control. Protection from what, exactly? I pay my bills, maintain my health, keep my house clean, manage my affairs competently. According to the evidence, you don't. According to evidence that only you have provided. Her mask slipped for just a moment, a flash of something cold and calculating behind her concerned expression. Dad, are you suggesting I'm fabricating evidence to steal your money? I'm suggesting that every piece of evidence supporting your claims comes from you, and every piece of that evidence contradicts the documented facts. The documented facts according to someone who's experiencing memory loss. The documented facts according to bank records, appointment calendars, and computer timestamps. She was quiet for a long moment, studying my face. Dad, I think we should schedule an emergency appointment with Dr. Peterson. Why? Because you're showing signs of paranoid delusion, and that's dangerous. I finished my coffee and closed my tablet. Yara, I have a question for you. What? If I were actually experiencing cognitive decline, would I be able to identify discrepancies between your reports and the documented timeline of events? She didn't answer, because it seems to me that someone with dementia would believe your version of events instead of questioning them. I stood up from the table and looked down at my daughter. I'll see you at Dr. Peterson's office, but I'm bringing my own documentation. As I walked away, I heard her make a phone call. Dr. Peterson, it's Yara Mitchell. We need to move up the timeline. That afternoon, I went home and did something I hadn't done since Elena's death. I called my old IBM colleague, Axel Morrison. Axel had retired 2 years before me, but we'd worked together for 15 years, investigating corporate security breaches and employee fraud. If anyone could help me understand what was happening, it would be him. Adrian, good to hear from you. How are you holding up? I need your professional opinion about something, Axel. Shoot. If someone wanted to have me declared mentally incompetent, what kind of evidence would they need? Long pause. Jesus, Adrian, what's going on? I spent 20 minutes walking Axel through everything. Dr. Peterson's appointments, Yara's documented concerns, the photos that didn't match reality, the pattern of false evidence. Adrian, this sounds like what we used to call evidence manufacturing in corporate investigations. Someone's building a case against you. That's what I was afraid of. The good news is that you're documenting everything in real time. The bad news is that mental competency cases usually favor family members, especially when there's medical professional support. What would you do in my situation? 2 things. First, get an independent psychiatric evaluation from someone Yara hasn't talked to. Second, start counter-documentation immediately. Counter-documentation? Prove your competency with objective evidence. Take cognitive tests. Get medical clearances. Document your daily activities with timestamps and verification. Build a counter case that's stronger than their case. And if that doesn't work, then you need to understand that your daughter is probably committing elder fraud, which is a federal crime, and you need to decide how far you're willing to go to protect yourself. That evening, I went to my basement office and began setting up what I called Operation Clarity. The basement had always been my sanctuary. Elena used to joke that it looked more like a command center than a home office. 2 monitors, a secure server, filing systems that would make the FBI proud, and recording equipment I'd used for documenting interviews during my IBM fraud investigations. Now I was going to use those same tools to investigate my own daughter. I set up 3 parallel documentation systems. System 1, daily activity logs with computer timestamps. Every action, every task, every decision recorded and verified. System 2. Medical and financial records proving competency. Bank statements, bill payments, medical clearances, cognitive assessments. System 3. Counter-surveillance documentation. If Yara was manufacturing evidence, I needed to catch her in the act. The basement office had one advantage I hadn't mentioned to anyone: a security camera system I'd installed after Elena's death. Officially, it was for home security. Unofficially, it recorded everything that happened in the house, including the kitchen where Yara had supposedly found that mysterious pot on the stove. I pulled up the recordings from April 18th, the morning Yara claimed to have found me cooking with the burner on. 6 o'clock a.m., I entered the basement office. 6:15 a.m., I made coffee downstairs, never went to the kitchen. 9:45 a.m., Yara entered through the front door using her key. 9:46 a.m., Yara went directly to the kitchen. 9:47 a.m., Yara placed a pot on the stove and turned on the burner. 9:48 a.m., Yara took photos of the pot on the stove. 9:49 a.m., Yara turned off the burner and removed the pot. 9:50 a.m., Yara called my name from upstairs. I watched the sequence 3 times to make sure I wasn't misunderstanding what I was seeing. My daughter had staged the entire incident. She'd entered my house, set up a dangerous scenario, photographed it as evidence of my incompetence, then cleaned up the evidence before discovering me sleeping in. I opened a new file. Evidence Manufactured Incompetency Case. Entry 1. April 18th, 9:45, 9:50 a.m. Video documentation of Yara staging pot on stove incident. Photos taken for false evidence. Incident never occurred as reported to Dr. Peterson. I scrolled through more security footage, looking for other incidents Yara had reported. April 15th. Yara had accessed my calendar system while I was at the hardware store, deleting a legitimate appointment and then taking screenshots showing missed appointments. April 12th. Yara had accessed my computer and changed the date stamps on bill payment confirmations, making them appear late. My daughter wasn't just lying to Dr. Peterson about my mental state. She was actively sabotaging my life to create evidence of incompetence. I sat back in my chair and stared at the evidence on my screens. 32 years of investigating corporate fraud had taught me to recognize patterns. This wasn't spontaneous family concern about an aging parent. This was a sophisticated long-term plan to steal everything Elena and I had built over 3 decades of marriage. The only question now was, how far was Yara willing to go? And how far was I willing to go to stop her? Dr. Peterson scheduled an emergency session for Thursday morning, requesting that Yara attend as well. Given your increased paranoid behavior, he explained over the phone, we need to assess whether you're safe living independently. I arrived at his office 15 minutes early and set up my tablet discreetly. Colorado was a one-party consent state for recordings, and I intended to document everything. The office felt different this time, more formal, less therapeutic. Dr. Peterson sat behind his desk, instead of in the comfortable chairs we'd used before. Yara sat across from me, her expression a mixture of concern and sadness. Adrian, Yara has reported some troubling developments in your behavior. What developments? Dr. Peterson consulted his notes. Paranoid accusations against family members, obsessive record-keeping, denial of documented incidents, claims that evidence of your decline has been fabricated. The evidence has been fabricated? Adrian, this is exactly the kind of paranoid thinking we discussed. You're constructing elaborate explanations rather than accepting the reality of your condition. My condition? Progressive cognitive decline, likely early-stage dementia. The words hit the room like a physical blow. Dementia, not just confusion or grief-related memory issues. Dementia. Based on what diagnosis? Based on 18 weeks of documented behavioral changes, family testimony, and clinical observation. Yara leaned forward in her chair. Dad, Dr. Peterson thinks it's time to consider more intensive support. What kind of support? Dr. Peterson pulled out a thick folder. I've prepared a preliminary competency evaluation for the court. My recommendation is immediate supervised care. Supervised care? a residential facility equipped to handle patients with advancing dementia, for your safety and the safety of others. I felt the room closing in around me. The safety of others? Yesterday you called Yara 17 times, making increasingly aggressive demands about financial records. That pattern of behavior suggests you may be becoming a danger to family members who are trying to help you. I stared at him. I called Yara twice yesterday about legitimate questions regarding my bank accounts. Yara, can you share your phone log with Adrian? My daughter pulled out her phone and showed me the call history. 17 calls from my number, spanning from 8 a.m. to 11 p.m. Many of them lasting only seconds, suggesting hang-ups or angry outbursts. Yara, I didn't make those calls. Dad, they're right here on my phone. Can I see the actual call log details? She hesitated for just a moment. Dr. Epawat, Peterson, is this helpful? He's going to deny everything anyway. It's part of the pattern, Dr. Peterson agreed. Adrian, denial is your mind's way of protecting itself from accepting a difficult reality. I pulled out my own phone. Here's my call log from yesterday. 2 calls to Yara, one at 10:15 a.m. for 3 minutes, one at 2:30 p.m. for 7 minutes. Dr. Peterson barely glanced at my phone. Adrian, you may have deleted the other calls. Why would I delete calls I don't remember making? Because the paranoid mind often attempts to eliminate evidence that contradicts its constructed reality. Constructed reality. Everything I said was being reframed as symptoms of dementia. Dr. Peterson, I'd like to request an independent psychiatric evaluation. That won't be necessary. I've been monitoring your condition for 3 months. I've been seeing you for 3 weeks. Yara has been providing clinical updates for 3 months, since your initial breakdown after Elena's death. I looked at my daughter. What clinical updates? Dad, you've been struggling since Mom died. I've been keeping Dr. Peterson informed about your condition, without my knowledge or consent. Dr. Peterson intervened. Adrian, family involvement is essential in cases of progressive cognitive decline. Patients often lack insight into their condition. I haven't signed releases allowing family involvement. You signed comprehensive care authorizations during your first appointment. I'd like to see those authorizations. Dr. Peterson and Yara exchanged glances. Adrian, your increasing demands for documentation and evidence are themselves symptoms of paranoid thinking. I felt like I was drowning. Every question I asked was being reframed as evidence of mental illness. Every piece of contrary evidence was dismissed as denial or paranoia. Dr. Peterson, what happens if I refuse residential care? Then we petition the court for involuntary commitment. Yara will testify about your declining condition, I'll provide medical documentation, and a judge will determine that you're unable to make decisions about your own welfare. And then? Then you're placed in protective custody, and Yara becomes your legal guardian with authority over your medical, financial, and living decisions. I looked around the office, the diplomas on the wall, the comfortable furniture designed to put patients at ease, the recording equipment that Dr. Peterson probably used to document sessions. Recording equipment. Dr. Peterson, are you recording this session? All sessions are recorded for clinical accuracy and legal protection. I'd like a copy of the recording. Patients don't have access to clinical recordings. But family members do? Another glance between Dr. Peterson and Yara. Adrian, Yara said softly, I know this is scary, but we're trying to help you. Help me what? Accept that you need care. Accept that you can't live independently anymore. I stood up from my chair. Both Dr. Peterson and Yara tensed slightly, as if they expected some kind of outburst. I have a question for both of you. What? Dr. Peterson asked. If I really had dementia, would I be able to identify the inconsistencies in your documentation? Would I be able to spot the holes in your timeline? Would I be able to recognize that this entire process is designed to strip away my legal rights? Silence. Because it seems to me that someone with progressive cognitive decline would be confused and compliant, not analytical and questioning. I picked up my tablet and headed for the door. Where are you going? Yara called after me. To get that independent psychiatric evaluation and to file a complaint with the Colorado Medical Board about Dr. Peterson's ethics violations. Adrian, Dr. Peterson said, his voice sharp with authority, leaving this session early will be documented as evidence of your inability to participate in your own care. I stopped at the door and turned back. Document whatever you want, Dr. Peterson. Just remember that everything you say is being recorded too. I held up my tablet, showing the recording app that had been running throughout the session. And Colorado is a one-party consent state. The look of shock on both their faces told me everything I needed to know. They hadn't expected their victim to fight back. I walked out of Dr. Peterson's office and drove straight to Denver General Hospital, where I requested an emergency psychiatric evaluation from Dr. Sarah Chen, the chief of psychiatry. Mr. Oberon, this is highly unusual. What kind of evaluation are you seeking? A cognitive competency assessment. I'm being told I have dementia, and I need an independent opinion, Dr. Chen was a sharp-eyed woman in her 40s who listened carefully as I explained the situation. When I mentioned Dr. Peterson's name, her expression shifted. James Peterson? I know his work. He's had some ethical questions raised before. What kind of questions? Inappropriate relationships with family members of patients, cases where his diagnoses seemed to serve family financial interests rather than patient welfare. She agreed to see me immediately. For the next 3 hours, Dr. Chen put me through comprehensive cognitive testing, memory assessments, logical reasoning, problem-solving exercises, attention span evaluations, the kind of thorough testing that Dr. Peterson had never performed. Mr. Oberon, your cognitive function is completely normal. Above average, actually, for your age group. There are no signs of dementia, mild cognitive impairment, or any other form of cognitive decline. I felt a surge of relief so powerful it almost brought me to tears. What about the behavioral evidence Dr. Peterson has documented? Based on what you've told me, it sounds like someone has been systematically manufacturing evidence to support a false diagnosis. Is that legal? It's elder abuse, and potentially criminal fraud if there's financial motivation. That afternoon, I called an emergency meeting at my house with Yara, claiming I wanted to discuss accepting help with my condition. She arrived at 4 p.m., accompanied by someone I didn't recognize, a tall man in an expensive suit carrying a briefcase. Dad, this is Bradley Watson. He's an attorney who specializes in elder care law. Elder care law? They were moving fast. Mr. Oberon, Bradley said, settling into Elena's favorite chair uninvited, Yara has briefed me on your situation. We're here to help facilitate a smooth transition to appropriate care. What kind of transition? Voluntary guardianship. Rather than forcing the court to intervene, you can voluntarily transfer decision-making authority to Yara. It's much less traumatic for everyone involved. I looked at my daughter. Yara, when did you hire an attorney? Dad, I've been preparing for this possibility for weeks. I wanted to make sure we had legal guidance when the time came. Weeks. She'd been planning this for weeks while I thought she was helping me cope with grief. And what exactly would this guardianship involve? Bradley opened his briefcase and pulled out a thick stack of documents. Yara would assume legal responsibility for your medical decisions, financial management, and living arrangements. You'd be free from the burden of complex decisions while ensuring your assets are protected. Protected? From whom? Mr. Watson, what happens to my assets under guardianship? They're managed by your guardian according to your best interests. And who determines what my best interests are? Your guardian, subject to court oversight. I picked up the documents and scanned the first page. Transfer of all decision-making authority. Revocation of power of attorney. Asset management authorization. This document gives Yara complete control over everything I own. For your protection, Yara said quickly. Dad, you've been making some concerning financial decisions lately. What financial decisions? The donation to that children's charity, $40,000 without discussing it with anyone. I stared at her. I donated $40,000 to Elena's memorial fund, the fund we established together to help sick children. Dad, you're not thinking clearly about money. That's part of the cognitive decline. Bradley nodded sympathetically. It's common for dementia patients to make impulsive charitable donations. The guardianship would protect you from financial exploitation. Financial exploitation. They were claiming that honoring Elena's memory was evidence of mental incompetence. I need a moment to review these documents. Of course, Bradley said. Take your time. I excused myself and went to my basement office, leaving them sitting in my living room. But instead of reviewing documents, I activated the security system I'd been building for the past month. Hidden cameras throughout the house, audio recording devices, motion sensors, everything connected to my secure server in the basement. And then I did something I'd learned from 32 years of the corporate fraud investigations. I let the perpetrators reveal themselves. I returned to the living room and sat down across from Yara and Bradley. I've decided to sign the guardianship papers. Yara's face lit up with relief. Dad, that's wonderful. You're making the right choice. But first, I want to understand the timeline. Well, when exactly did you first become concerned about my mental health? Right after Mom's funeral, you seemed so lost. And when did you contact Dr. Peterson? About a month later, early April. And when did you hire Mr. Watson? Bradley answered for her. Yara contacted my office 6 weeks ago. We've been preparing for various contingencies. 6 weeks ago was March 1st, 2 weeks before Elena's death. I let that sink in for a moment, then reached into my briefcase and pulled out my tablet. I have something to show both of you. I opened the security camera footage from April 18th, the morning Yara had claimed to find me with the pot on the stove. This is from my home security system, April 18th, 9:45 a.m. The video played on my tablet screen, clearly showing Yara entering my house, placing the pot on the stove, photographing it, then removing it. Yara went completely pale. Bradley leaned forward to get a better look at the screen. This video shows you manufacturing evidence of my cognitive decline. Dad, that's not what happened. Then explain what did happen. I came by to check on you, and the pot was already on the stove. I just documented it before cleaning up. I played the video again. Watch carefully. You enter the house, go directly to the kitchen, place the pot on the stove, turn on the burner, take photos, then turn off the burner. The entire sequence takes 4 minutes. Bradley was studying the video with growing alarm. Mrs. Mitchell, this appears to show you staging evidence. It's not staging, it's preventive documentation. Preventive documentation? Dad was going to leave something on the stove eventually. I was just documenting what would have happened. I opened another file on my tablet. Here's the phone record from yesterday. Yara claimed I called her 17 times. My actual call log shows 2 calls. But here's the interesting part. Paul, I showed them a screenshot from my phone company's detailed records. 16 of the alleged calls came from a spoofing app that makes it look like calls are coming from my number. The app was purchased with Yara's credit card. Bradley was frantically taking notes now. Mrs. Mitchell, did you use a call spoofing application? That's not illegal. It is when used to defraud family members or support false medical diagnoses. I opened a third file. Here are Dr. Peterson's session recordings, which he claimed I couldn't access. Turns out patient recordings become public record when elder abuse is reported to the state. I played a portion of a recording from 3 weeks earlier, a conversation between Dr. Peterson and Yara that had occurred after my appointment. Dr. Peterson's voice, the guardianship petition will be stronger if we can show escalating incompetence. Yara's voice, how escalating? Dr. Peterson, dangerous behavior, threats against family members, financial irresponsibility. Yara, I can provide evidence of all of those things. Dr. Peterson, make sure the evidence is documented properly. The judge will want to see patterns of decline. I stopped the recording and looked at Bradley, whose face had gone ashen. Mr. Watson, what you've just heard is conspiracy to commit elder fraud, a federal crime carrying up to 20 years in prison. Bradley stood up abruptly. Mrs. Mitchell, I can no longer represent you. This meeting is over. He gathered his papers and headed for the door. Mr. O'Barron, I recommend you contact the FBI immediately. As the door closed behind him, I looked at my daughter, sitting alone on Elena's couch. Yara, I have one question. She was staring at her hands, her face flushed with shame or anger. I couldn't tell which. Why? She looked up at me, and for a moment I saw the little girl who used to help Elena bake cookies for the neighbors. Because I'm drowning, Dad. The divorce cost me everything. I've got $89,000 in credit card debt, and my business is failing. When Mom died, all I could think about was that insurance money and this house and your retirement accounts. So you decided to steal them. I decided to survive, and you would have given it all away to strangers anyway. Those strangers are sick children, Yara, your mother's legacy. Mom's dead. I'm alive. My kids are alive. We need that money more than dead people need memorials. I looked at my daughter and realized that I'd lost her long before this conversation started. The person sitting across from me wasn't the child Elena and I had raised. She was someone else entirely. Yara, I've already contacted Agent Catherine Morrison at the FBI. They're opening a federal investigation into elder fraud. Your name is on the case file. Dad, you can't do this to your own daughter. I'm not doing this to you, sweetheart. You did this to yourself. And I handed her a business card. FBI Special Agent Catherine Morrison, White Collar Crime Division. Agent Morrison will want to interview you within the next week. I suggest you get a better lawyer than Mr. Watson. As Yara walked out of the house, I heard her make a phone call in the driveway. Dr. Peterson, we have a problem. But they were wrong. They didn't have a problem. I had a solution. The FBI moved with impressive speed. Agent Catherine Morrison called me the next morning to schedule an interview. Mr. Oberon, based on the evidence you've provided, we're opening a federal investigation into conspiracy to commit elder fraud. This appears to be part of a larger pattern we've been tracking. Larger pattern? Dr. Peterson has been linked to 17 similar cases over the past 3 years. Families manufacturing evidence to have elderly relatives declared incompetent, then assuming control of their assets. 17 families. I wasn't the first victim, just the first one to fight back effectively. Agent Morrison arrived at my house that afternoon with a team of 3 other agents and a digital forensics specialist. Mr. Oberon, we need to document all the evidence you've collected, secure your computer systems, and interview you formally about the conspiracy. For the next 4 hours, I walked them through everything. The manufactured evidence, the falsified medical records, the staged incidents, the coordinated plan between Yara and Dr. Peterson. The key evidence is the security footage, I explained. It proves Yara staged the incidents she reported to Dr. Peterson. Agent Morrison studied the video files. This is excellent documentation. Most elder fraud cases lack this level of concrete evidence. I spent 32 years investigating corporate fraud. I know how to build a case. Your daughter made a significant mistake targeting someone with your background. And the digital forensics specialist, a young woman named Agent Chen, was examining my computer setup. Sir, this is an impressive security system. Professional-grade equipment. Old habits. I always documented everything. It's going to save you from losing everything. 3 days later, the FBI arrested Dr. Peterson at his office. The charges were extensive. Conspiracy to commit elder fraud, mail fraud, wire fraud, and running a criminal enterprise. Local news stations covered the story extensively. Prominent psychiatrist arrested in elder fraud scheme. The investigation had uncovered a network of lawyers, medical professionals, and family members working together to systematically steal from elderly victims. Yara was arrested at her apartment 2 days after Dr. Peterson. I learned about it from Agent Morrison, who called to update me on the case. Your daughter has been charged with conspiracy to commit elder fraud, fabrication of evidence, and attempted theft of assets valued at over $3 million. $3 million, Elena's life insurance money, our house, my retirement accounts, everything we'd built together over 31 years of marriage. What's the likely sentence? Federal elder fraud carries up to 20 years. Given the sophisticated nature of the conspiracy and the dollar amounts involved, she's looking at a minimum of 8 to 12 years. 8 to 12 years. Yara would be in her 40s when she got out. Mr. Oberon, there's something else you should know. Your daughter's case led us to a much larger investigation. We've identified 43 families who were victimized by this network over the past 5 years. 43 families? Systematic elder fraud, targeting recently widowed individuals with substantial assets. Dr. Peterson would identify vulnerable patients, family members would manufacture evidence of incompetence, lawyers would push through quick guardianship proceedings, and the assets would be liquidated. How much money total? Approximately $85 million stolen from elderly victims over 5 years. The scope of it was staggering. Elena and I had been targeted not randomly, but as part of a sophisticated criminal operation that identified grieving families and systematically destroyed them. But we hadn't been destroyed. We'd fought back. 2 weeks after Yara's arrest, I received a call from Bradley Watson, the lawyer who had fled my house when the evidence was revealed. "Mr. Oberon, I need to apologize for my involvement in this situation. I had no idea Mrs. Mitchell was fabricating evidence." "What did you think was happening, Mr. Watson?" "I thought I was helping a family navigate a difficult situation with an elderly parent experiencing cognitive decline. Mrs. Mitchell provided medical documentation and family testimony that seemed legitimate. Did you verify any of the documentation independently?" Long pause. "No, sir. I relied on the family's representations and Dr. Peterson's professional opinion." "How many other families did you help with similar guardianship cases?" Another pause. 12 other cases over the past 2 years. 12 other families, 12 other elderly parents who had been systematically defrauded by their own children with Bradley Watson's legal assistance. "Mr. Watson, the FBI will probably want to talk to you. I know, I've already contacted them to cooperate with their investigation." 3 months later, the Colorado Medical Board revoked Dr. Peterson's license and fined him $500,000. He also faced civil lawsuits from 43 families seeking restitution for stolen assets. The Colorado Bar Association suspended Bradley Watson's license, pending investigation into his role in the elder fraud conspiracy. Yara's trial was scheduled for the following spring. Her court-appointed attorney contacted me about a plea bargain. "Mr. Oberon, your daughter is willing to plead guilty to reduced charges in exchange for cooperation with the federal investigation. The prosecution is offering 8 years instead of the potential 20. "What kind of cooperation?" "Testimony against Dr. Peterson and the other members of the conspiracy. Names, methods, financial records, everything she knows about the operation." I thought about Elena, about the promise I'd made to protect her memory and honor her legacy. I thought about the 43 other families who had been victimized by this network. "Tell the prosecution I support whatever arrangement helps them prosecute the full conspiracy, even if it means a lighter sentence for your daughter. Justice isn't about revenge. It's about protecting other families from what happened to us." The plea agreement was finalized in November. Yara would serve 8 years in federal prison and pay full restitution to other victims of the fraud network. On the day she was sentenced, I sat in the courthouse gallery and watched my daughter stand before the judge. "Mrs. Mitchell," the judge said, "you betrayed the most fundamental bond in human society, the trust between parent and child. You exploited your father's grief to steal his life's work and assets." Yara stood silently as the sentence was read. As she was led away in handcuffs, she looked back at me one time. I couldn't read the expression on her face. Regret? Anger? Acceptance? I didn't try to figure it out. Some relationships can't be repaired. Some trust can't be restored. Some choices define who you really are when everything else is stripped away. 6 months later, the full scope of the elder fraud network became clear. The FBI had arrested 47 people across 5 states, psychiatrists, attorneys, family members, and court-appointed guardians who had systematically stolen $85 million from elderly victims over 5 years. Agent Morrison called to update me on the case. "Mr. Oberon, your documentation was the breakthrough we needed. Without your evidence, we never would have been able to prove the systematic nature of this conspiracy." "What happened to the other families?" 43 families are recovering their stolen assets. The court ordered full restitution plus penalties. Some families lost everything, but most are getting their lives back. I thought about those families. People like Elena and me who had trusted their children and been systematically betrayed. People whose grief had been weaponized against them by their own relatives. "Agent Morrison, What happened to the children involved? The ones who betrayed their parents? Sentences ranging from 5 to 18 years, depending on the amount stolen and their cooperation with the investigation. Your daughter's 8-year sentence was on the lighter end because of her testimony. And Dr. Peterson? 15 years federal prison. The judge said he'd violated the most sacred trust in medicine, using his professional authority to harm vulnerable patients. The local newspapers covered the sentencing extensively. The Denver Post ran a front-page story. Massive elder fraud network exposed. Local FBI investigation saves $85 million in stolen assets. But for me, the real victory wasn't the prosecutions or the recovered money. The real victory was what happened at Denver Children's Hospital. I'd used Elena's recovered life insurance money, $2, $3 million plus penalties and interest, to establish the Elena Oberon Foundation for Children's Heart Health exactly as she had dreamed. Dr. Sarah Chen, the pediatric cardiologist who'd helped evaluate my cognitive function, became the foundation's medical advisor. Mr. Oberon, Elena's foundation has already helped 62 children receive life-saving heart surgeries. These are kids who would have died without her generosity. 62 children, 62 families who wouldn't face the impossible choice between their child's life and financial ruin. Can you give me specific examples? Maria Santos, age 6, complex heart valve replacement. The Patterson twins, both needing emergency surgery. Rebecca Thompson, born with multiple heart defects. Without Elena's foundation, none of these children would be alive today. Elena's dream was saving lives on a scale even she hadn't imagined possible. The foundation's Christmas party at Denver Children's Hospital was filled with families whose lives had been fundamentally changed. Parents who no longer faced bankruptcy because their children needed heart surgery. Kids running around the hospital playroom with surgical scars and healthy hearts. In the center of it all was a memorial garden the hospital had created in Elena's honor, a quiet space where families could reflect and find peace during the most difficult times in their lives. Elena would have loved this, I told Dr. Chen as we watched the children play. She did love it. This was her vision, her dream about, her legacy. You just made sure it became real. But the foundation wasn't the only consequence of fighting back against Yara's conspiracy. 3 other families contacted me after reading about the case in the news. Elderly parents who suspected their own children were planning similar schemes. Margaret Walsh in Colorado Springs. My son has been pressuring me to see a psychiatrist for memory issues I don't have. Robert Martinez in Fort Collins. My daughter wants me to sign papers giving her control of my finances for my protection. Jennifer Thompson in Boulder. My son hired a lawyer to discuss guardianship options before I've been declared incompetent. I helped all 3 families document their situations and contact the FBI. 2 of them uncovered evidence of planned elder fraud conspiracies. One son was arrested before he could steal his mother's assets. The experience taught me something important. Most elder abuse succeeds because victims don't know how to fight back. They don't document evidence. They don't understand their legal rights. They don't recognize the warning signs until it's too late. So I started teaching them. I began giving presentations at senior centers, retirement communities, and elder law seminars, protecting yourself from family financial abuse, recognizing the warning signs of elder fraud, how to document evidence of financial manipulation. The presentations were packed. Hundreds of elderly people who had sensed something wrong but didn't know what to do about it. Most elder fraud is committed by family members, I would tell them, not strangers, not telemarketers, your own children and grandchildren, people you trust completely. I showed them how to set up documentation systems, how to recognize manufactured evidence, how to protect their assets legally, how to fight back when family members tried to steal their life's work. The key is preparation, I would explain. Don't wait until you suspect fraud. Set up protections now while you're clear-thinking and competent. The Colorado Attorney General's office started using my case as a training example for prosecutors working elder fraud cases. Mr. Oberon's documentation made this case prosecutable, Assistant Attorney General Lisa Morrison told a training seminar. Most elder fraud cases fail because victims don't have evidence. Mr. O'Baron's background taught him how to build an airtight case. But the most important consequence was personal. I discovered something about myself during the months of fighting for Elena's memory. I was stronger than I'd realized, more capable, more resilient. Losing Elena had made me feel broken and vulnerable, but fighting off Yara's conspiracy had reminded me who I really was underneath the grief. I was Adrian O'Baron, 32 years of corporate fraud investigation, a man who had spent his entire career protecting people from financial criminals. And I wasn't done protecting people yet. 6 months after Yara's sentencing, I received a letter from federal prison. Dad, I've had time to think about what I did. I know you'll never forgive me, but I want you to know that I understand why you fought back. I was wrong. I became someone Mom never would have recognized. I'm sorry. I read the letter twice, then filed it with the others she'd sent. Apologies couldn't restore trust. Regret couldn't undo betrayal. But they were a start. Some boundaries, once crossed, can never be uncrossed. Some relationships, once broken, can never be fully repaired. But some lessons learned in darkness can light the way for others facing similar struggles. Elena's legacy wasn't just the children her foundation would save. It was also the families we'd protected by exposing the conspiracy that tried to destroy us. That felt like justice. That felt like love. That felt like a promise kept. 2 years later, I received news that changed everything. Yara had been released early from federal prison for exceptional cooperation with ongoing elder fraud investigations. 8 years had become 4 years, and she was coming home to Denver. Agent Morrison called to let me know. Mr. Oberon, your daughter will be on supervised release for the next 4 years. Part of her parole conditions include making full restitution to fraud victims and staying away from elderly individuals in professional settings. Is she required to stay away from me? Not unless you request a restraining order. That's your decision. My decision. After 4 years of silence, I had to decide whether to let my daughter back into my life. The truth was, I'd thought about Yara every day during her imprisonment. Not with forgiveness, exactly, but with a complicated mixture of grief and loss that felt similar to mourning Elena's death. I'd lost my wife to a heart attack I couldn't prevent. I'd lost my daughter to choices I couldn't understand. Both losses had taught me something important about love and boundaries. Love doesn't mean accepting unacceptable behavior. Protection sometimes means saying no to people you care about. And some relationships can only survive if they're completely rebuilt from the ground up. 3 weeks after Yara's release, she called me. Dad, it's me. Her voice sounded different, older, uncertain. Hello, Yara. I know you probably don't want to talk to me. I'm talking to you now. I mean really talk. About what happened. About what I did. I was quiet for a long moment, sitting in Elena's chair with the afternoon sun streaming through the windows she'd chosen 25 years ago. What would you like to say? I'd like to say I'm sorry, and I'd like to try to explain why I did what I did. I understand why you did it, Yara. You needed money and saw an opportunity. It was more than that. Then explain it. I was drowning, Dad. After the divorce, after losing the house, after my business started failing. I felt like I was disappearing. Like I didn't matter. Like I was invisible. So you decided to make me invisible instead. I decided to survive. But I became someone I don't recognize. Someone who could lie about her dead mother. Someone who could destroy her own father. I listened to the pain in her voice and tried to reconcile it with the woman who had sat in Dr. Peterson's office fabricating evidence of my cognitive decline. Yara, what do you want from me now? I want to know if there's any chance you could ever forgive me. Forgiveness. The word hung between us like a bridge that might collapse under the weight of everything that had happened. I don't know, I said honestly, but I'm willing to find out. We agreed to meet at a neutral location, not Starbucks, which held too many complicated memories, but at a small park near Elena's memorial garden. When I saw Yara walking toward me across the grass, I was shocked by how much she'd changed. 4 years in prison had aged her more than the previous decade. Her hair was grayer, her face thinner, her eyes carrying a weight I'd never seen before. We sat on a bench overlooking the garden where Elena's memorial plaque reflected the afternoon's sunlight. Dad, I need you to know that every day in prison I thought about what I'd destroyed. Not just your trust, but Mom's legacy, the foundation she dreamed about, the children she wanted to help. The foundation is helping children. Elena's dreams survived what you tried to do to it. I know. I've been following the foundation's work online. 97 children helped so far. It's incredible. Elena would be proud. She'd also be heartbroken about what I did to our family. I looked at my daughter, trying to see the child Elena and I had raised somewhere beneath the scars of the choices she'd made. Yara, I need you to understand something. I can't trust you the way I used to. I may never be able to trust you that way again. I understand, but that doesn't mean I've stopped loving you. Her eyes filled with tears, the first real emotion I'd seen from her since this conversation started. The love is still there, I continued, but it has to exist within boundaries that protect both of us. What kind of boundaries? Complete transparency about your finances, no involvement in my medical decisions, no access to my accounts or legal documents. And if you ever lie to me again about anything important, that's the end. I can live with those boundaries. Can you live with the fact that your children, my grandchildren, don't know who I am anymore? That I missed 4 years of their lives because of what you did? She was crying now, quietly but steadily. Dad, I know I can't undo the past, but I'd like to try to build something new if you're willing. I thought about Elena, about the promises I'd made to her, about the legacy we'd built together that had survived my daughter's betrayal. We can try, I said. One conversation at a time, one honest moment at a time. Thank you. Don't thank me yet, Yara. We have a lot of work to do. As we sat together in the fading afternoon light, I realized that some relationships can survive even the deepest betrayals. Not unchanged, not the same as before, but they can survive. If you've listened to this story, I hope you remember that families are complicated, but love can be stronger than the worst choices we make. Where are you watching from? Let me know in the comments, because sometimes the hardest victories aren't about defeating enemies. They're about learning how to love people who have hurt you, without letting them hurt you again.